So in our company database, what can be the entity type? We do not give the entities, okay? Instead, I directly give you some information about entity type and attribute. First, what can be the entity type in this example? First line is the company is organized into department. Do you think the company can be entity?
Yes.
This is just a database name. How many companies do you have? Just one company. That's our goal. That's our objective. If you build a database for companies in United States, then company can be entity. But in this case, in this example, this is only one company, which means that's our goal. Okay? Only one data. We don't have to build a database for this one. Find the entity type. Only one data. Okay? So we can find first entity type, department. Probably it will have a HR department, payroll department, ABC department, sales department. All of them are entity. Okay? Each of them are entity. Then we can define the department as the entity type. That consists of what? What can be the attribute? What attribute can describe the department? It's actually very nice. And I don't think you have such a very nice customer who describe their requirement like that this way. Okay, because this is the first time for you to design. So, followed by each department has a name, number, and employee who manage the department. In other words, manager. Okay? We keep track of start date of the department manager. Also, it has many locations, 5 attributes. So 5 the attribute describe the department. So first we have department. That's the first entity type. What else? What can be the second one?
Project.
Each department controls a number of projects. So there might be ABC project, CDE project, project A, project B. So there might be a bunch of projects. So there can be entity. That project can be described by what? Unique name, unique number, and also single location of the project. It has 3 attributes. Okay? Then, what else? Entity? Yes, employee. We store each employee's what? Attribute. Right? Social security number, address, salary, sex, and birthday. Very nicely explained. So very easy to take out the entity information. So employee, we have employee. What about next one? Each employee works for one department. Department is already defined, right? Entity. But may works on several projects. Project is also defined. And we keep track of, what about the works for? Or works on? They are not existing. That's work. That's something others. It's not entity. Okay? So we will discuss those things later. But we need to find first the existing things, entity. We keep track of the number of hours per week that an employee currently works on each project. Okay? Some number of hours. That can be attribute. Right? So we will put So number of hours per week for each employee on each project. But it can be multiple projects, so which means many hours, different hours. Also, we also keep track of the direct supervisor of each employee. So supervisor is an entity. It's also employee. So we can consider supervisor as something attribute or some other information. Okay, any other entity type can you find? Each employee may have a number of dependent. So we have the dependent. So each dependent we keep track of those information. We found all entity. Actually, this is not entity. Entity is the example. Okay? We may have probably HR department, payroll department, and some other department. By grouping, we can find department, entity, type. Then we have attribute. Attribute is the name and number, department number, manager, and
location.
The start date of the manager and locations. And project is the same, employee is not the same. You can find the attribute same way. Okay? So this is the first step. Define entity types. Okay? So that is the first step. From now on, this is an entity. This is the entity type. By combining entity type and entities plus, this is called entity set. Okay? So entity set consists of entity type and entities. A little bit complicated. From now on, I'm going to use entity. Entity type, entity set as just nothing but entity. Okay? That's true. So in real life project, nobody say what is entity type, what is entity set, just entity. Okay? So I can, from now on, we can say that we are going to use entities, entity set, entity type interchangeably. However, in your exam, midterm exam or final exam, you should be able to differentiate what is the entity, what is the entity set, and what is entity type. But practically, I'm going to use only entity to represent, to explain about the entity set, entity type, entity. Okay? So this is the entity. So first step is designing of the entity type. That means finding entity. Then, at the same time, we can find entity type. Okay? Why don't you fill out this one together? So second, an attribute of the entity. Why don't you find the attribute of the project, attribute of the employee, and attribute of the department. I will give the couple of morning. I know you are very smart, so you can understand easily what Professor Lee explain right now. But that's totally different from whether you can design ER modeling or not. Understanding and doing practically is different. So please do it by yourself. Okay, even though you believe you understand this one, that will help you a lot. So what can be the attribute? Why don't we fill out the missing part together? What will be the attribute of the project? It has a unique name, just a unique name and unique number and a location. Okay? So before we fill out the information about the employee and department, usually the figure is much better than the describe using your letter. So from now, yes, it's not very difficult to understand this one, but sometimes when you have the 1,000 entity, it will be very hard to understand. So from the description of your ER modeling. So why don't we use the diagram to not different in terms of the design, but we will use the diagram for presentation, better presentation. For example, for entity type or entity, we will use rectangle, like this one. How many rectangles do we need? Four. 1, 2, 3, 4. Then name is inside department. It's not case sensitive, but usually we like the capital letter for the name of entity. Project and employee and department. Dependent. Then what about the attribute? Set of attribute. To represent the attribute, we are going to use oval. Circle is the same the size by radius, so it's not good for represent the very long name. So we are going to use this kind of oval, like for example name. Then connect to the associate the entity. And next one is number. And next one is manager. And next one is start date. And location. Similarly, name and number and location. But this one is multiple locations. This one is just one location. There might be a problem later, okay? Especially when we are doing relational database model. So we are going to differentiate multiple location and just one location. In other words, multiple value and single value. This one is a single value. This one, how many names for each department? One name. How many number? Only one department number. How many manager? One manager. But this one has multiple locations. So for such a multi-value, we are going to use double over. Okay? We are going to use double over for only multiple value. What about the employee? Employee, we have social security number. Then we have address. We have salary. We have sex. We have birthday. Sometimes it's called a DOB. If you have a better name, you can change it. Then, advisor. Any information about the advisor? You mean the supervisor? Yeah. Supervisor. Others. Address is over here. And our number of works, hours, is a multiple, right? We have the main, so hours for A project, hours for B project, hours for C project. So double over, make the double over. Then what about the dependent? We have name, sex, and birthday, DOB, and relationship to the employee. That's the output of defining entity. Actually, entity type, okay, including attribute. Are they same as yours? Okay. Then you already did half of them, half of the EI model. That's the reason it's easy. 1 hour is enough to understand the EI model. The more important thing is whether or not you understand domain itself. So if you are asked the medical or hospital database, you should know the hospital, about the hospital. So data domain is more important. Okay, then the next step is, why don't we go back to the description again? Okay, then why don't you take a look at the employee? We have 3 sub-bullets. First one is each employee works for one department. Okay? But may works on several projects. First, why don't you take a look at the first one? Each employee works for one department. In other words, Lee works for HR. James works for payroll. And Patel works for payroll. And so on. You can find something, but it's not the entity or entity type, but it's another information. Okay? So we are going to call, we cannot see whether this is the real existing or not. So it's not the part of the entity type, but it's some more important information, right? We try to keep such an information. This is called relationship. Then, if just like the entity and entity type, if we can group, this is employee. And this is department, entity. Entity by entity. It's something works for. We can find works for. This is called relationship. Relationship is something between two entity or entity type. By grouping, each of them is called a relationship. Relationship. Then, by grouping, this one is called a relationship type. So, works for relationship type. Just like the entity and entity type. Okay? Then, we can say relationship plus relationship type is called relationship set. From now on, I'm going to use relationship. Relationship type, relationship set interchangeably. Especially, I'm going to use relationship to represent. Sometimes it can be relationship type, relationship set, relationship itself. So relationship. Okay, actually, relationship is each example, each of them. But relationship can indicate the something, the description. like the works for. Can you find any other relationship type from this example? Yes, we can find work on. Right? Anything else? Actually, what about the project? Second bullet. Each department control. Right? Control what? A number of projects. Okay? That's the relationship between department and project. What else? Dependent. Employee may have dependent. Right? That is the relationship between two entities. Anything else?
Supervisor.
Yes, that can be. We define supervisor as attribute. But think about supervisor. Who supervise? Employee supervise employee. So anyway, it's a two relationship. A two entity, then relationship between two entity. So it can be supervisor, can be relationship. Anything else? What about manage?
The number of hours.
Number of hours is the relationship. A little bit hard to say. That's the relationship. Relationship is in between two entities. Managing. So one employee manage one department. So we can say that is the relationship. Two entities are involved. Number of hours. What do you think? Number of hours. Can it be n? We already defined works on relationship. How many hours do you work on? So it's actually attribute of relationship type. That means relationship also has attribute. Okay? So you should be careful whether this is the attribute, whether this is the relationship, this is the entity, or the attribute of entity. So let's find first. What do you have? The manage. From now on, to represent the relationship, we are going to use diamond like this one. Okay? Also, relationship has two entities. First, associate the entity. We can connect department and employee. Then we can say employee manage department. Right? That's the first step. Okay? Then controls. Control is between each department. So department and control. Department control project. Yes, good. What else? Employee works for department. Employee works for department. Then you may realize there might be more than one relationship for two entities. Employee and department, we already have two relationships. That's not a problem. Anything else? Work on is between employee and project. Work on this one. And also has. Employee has dependent. What else? Supervisor. Supervisor supervise. Employee supervise employee. That is also possible. Okay? It's called sometimes recursive relationship. Self-relationship. Okay? Then, anything else? I think pretty much. Then, where is the work zone? We already discussed about hours, number of hours. Number of hours can be attribute of this one. You can use over and connect to the corresponding relationship. It doesn't look like very good. However, I'd like to show. We already changed hours to this one, right? And anything else? Yes. Supervisor. Where's the supervisor information? Supervisor already changed it into this one, so we don't need. Okay. That is relationship and relationship type and attribute. But what time is it? 44. So I think pretty much that is the 80% of the ER modeling. We have some more. The next class we will continue this one by finding different types of relationship. That means how many, for each employee, how many departments will be managed? Only one. One employee, one department. Okay. However, how many employees for each department? This one works for one department and many employees. What about the project and employee? How many employees for each project? Many employees. But for each employee, how many projects? Many projects. It's a many to many. We have different types of relationship. We will find such a different types of relationship that is actually one to one, one to many, many to many. You already learned in set theory. Can you remember this one? Such a mapping. So one to many, which one is one to one, which one is one to many and many to many. Relationship in the set. It's exactly the same thing. We will discuss about this as well as the enhanced ER modeling. Okay? So in the next class. Any question? Okay? So if I didn't call your name for attendance, so you don't have to worry about it. If you miss the handout, I put the behind, you can pick up them. Or you can go to the website to download. Thank you and see you next time.